Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating piece of source material. It takes an ancient biblical text, specifically Isaiah chapter 35, and maps it directly onto modern 20th century history. Whether you're a history buff, a theology nerd, or just someone who loves seeing ancient texts viewed through a modern lens, this analysis gives us a super intriguing framework for looking at the 1948 establishment of Israel. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the fall of Idumea, watch the desert blossom again, track the wars of the restored nation, examine the healing of people and lands, and finally, walk the highway to Zion. We'll just be taking an impartial verse-by-verse look through the source's analysis to see exactly how it connects these ancient prophecies to modern geopolitical milestones.
So, Part 1, the fall of Idumea and its post-70 AD decline. Because, before we can really grasp the incredible restoration described in chapter 35, the source argues we've got to understand the sheer desolation that came first. To really get our bearings, the analysis actually points us one chapter back, to Isaiah 34. This chapter prophesies the severe decline of an area known as Idumea. According to the document we're looking at, after the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, this land, which makes up the southern half of modern-day Israel, was just left completely desolate. The text specifically notes that the territory was formerly allotted to wild beasts, birds, and reptiles. It basically remained an untamed wilderness for generation after generation.
But then, we hit section 2, the desert blossoms again. And here, the narrative pivots dramatically. We go from centuries of barren desolation straight into this incredibly vivid vision of geographical healing.
In Isaiah chapter 35, verse 1, it states, "The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose." Our source interprets this specific verse as a direct arrow pointing to events post-1948. The argument is that after wild beasts literally possessed the land for nearly 2 millennia, the geography itself was finally going to heal. It was going to physically transform, just in time to support the massive influx of returning Jewish people. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive historical contrast we're talking about. On one hand, you have the post-70 AD era, complete desolation inhabited by wild beasts. And then on the other, the post-1948 era, which is framed as a literal agricultural miracle. It's a profound before and after snapshot. It shows us exactly how the source views the geography physically changing to sustain a newly restored nation. The text expands on this agricultural boom in the very next verse. In Isaiah chapter 35, verse 2, it states, "It shall blossom abundantly, and rejoice even with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the excellency of Carmel and Sharon." The author connects this deeply poetic imagery, Lebanon's famous cedars, the lush pastures of Carmel and Sharon, directly to the 1948 restoration. According to the analysis, this is all symbolizing the modern land blooming with fruits and vegetables, essentially regaining its ancient agricultural glory.
Moving right along to section 3, Wars of the Restored Nation. Here, the explainer shifts our focus away from the agricultural side of things and dives straight into historical military conflicts and geopolitics.
In Isaiah chapter 35, verses 3 and 4, it states, "Strengthen ye the weak hands, and confirm the feeble knees. Say to them that are of a fearful heart, Be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, even God with a recompense. He will come and save you." The source interprets this as a massive promise of divine protection. Recognizing that the returning people might feel incredibly weak compared to the sheer strength of the surrounding Arab nations, the text is viewed as a divine guarantee, a promise that their battles would be fought for them once they return to this latter-day land.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the source anchors that biblical promise and the specific prophetic timelines aligning with 1948 to hard historical data. Consider this. Israel declared its independence on May 14, 1948. The very next day, they were at war with Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. That conflict lasted until July 1949. When we look at the numbers, Israel lost 6,373 people, which was about 1% of its population at the time. Arab casualties are estimated around 7,000, and critically, an estimated 711,000 Palestinian refugees were displaced. The source uses these staggering figures to really underscore the immense struggle and the highly unlikely survival of this brand new nation facing completely overwhelming odds.
Let's move ahead and see how this dynamic builds across the decades. The document maps out a chronological sequence of ongoing conflicts following that initial war for independence. You've got the 1956 Suez Crisis, the 1967 Six-Day War, the 1973 Yom Kippur War, right through to the Lebanon Wars of 1982 and 2006, and up to the conflicts that began in October 2023. Within the framework of our source material, this timeline isn't just a list of modern historical events. It's actually presented as an ongoing, continuous demonstration of that promised defense against surrounding nations.
This brings us to Section 4, Healing People and Lands. After zooming out to look at external military wars, the analysis pivots right back inward. It looks simultaneously at the physical environment and the spiritual state of the people.
In Isaiah chapter 35, verses 5 and 6, it states, "Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap as an hart, and the tongue of the dumb sing." According to our source, this is way more than just a beautiful metaphor. It's interpreted as a dual prophecy. It represents literal, physical healing, sure, but also a profound spiritual awakening among the people returning to the land. To really hammer home this idea of a spiritual awakening, the document points over to the New Testament. Matthew chapter 11, verses 4 and 5 states, "The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear." The author links Christ's historical healing miracles straight to this modern narrative. The implication is that in these latter days, the Jewish people would experience a spiritual eye-opening, coming to a brand new understanding right alongside the physical recovery of their nation. And getting back to the physical environment, in Isaiah chapter 35, verse 7, it states, "And the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water, and the habitation of dragons, where each lay, shall be grass with reeds and rushes." The text pictures literal living waters just bursting forth out of the desert, replacing these arid, dry areas, places that used to be inhabited only by wild jackals or dragons, with vital, life-giving springs. To quickly summarize this section, the source places a very heavy dual emphasis on this era. It's an ecological revival, the physical land producing water and life again, running perfectly parallel to a spiritual restoration of the people themselves. It's framed as a complete, total renewal from the ground up. All right, let's move to our fifth and final section, the Highway to Zion. This segment zeroes in on the culminating promise of the entire chapter, a prophetic guarantee of safe passage. In Isaiah chapter 35, verses 8 and 9, it states, "And an highway shall be there, and a way, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it. No lion shall be there, nor any ravenous beast shall go up thereon. It shall not be found there." This describes a secure path, completely free from any ravenous beasts or external threats. So, the crucial point is how the author translates this highly ancient imagery into modern geopolitics. This highway isn't interpreted as a literal, paved road. Instead, it's seen as a symbolic pathway of uninterrupted access, allowing the safe return of the Jewish people to Zion. In this allegorical analysis, the lions and ravenous beasts represent tyrannical nations or powers. The prophecy implies that post-1948, no power on earth would be able to ultimately stop this mass restoration and gathering.
But to truly grasp the historical weight of this return, we have to look at the unimaginable tragedy that preceded it. The source presents a deeply sobering statistic. It's estimated that 40 to 50% of the world's Jewish population was slain during the horrors of World War II. The author uses this devastating context to explain exactly why the ancient text uses very specific words like ransomed and redeemed. It implies a literal survival, a rescue from near-total destruction by the nations of the earth.
And that immense historical context brings us right to the ultimate climax of the chapter. In Isaiah chapter 35, verse 10, it states, "And the ransomed of the Lord shall return, and come to Zion with songs and everlasting joy upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away." In the source's view, the redeemed emerge from this immense, world-shattering tragedy, only to find joy, gladness, and an ultimate restoration in the modern state.
So what does this all mean? How do modern historical migrations and events actually mirror these ancient prophetic visions? Whether you view this as literal divine intervention or as a deeply fascinating historical allegory, it really forces us to ask how ancient texts continue to shape the very real borders and conflicts of our modern world today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking great questions, and I'll see you next time.